We are joined by Genyne Edwards, founder of P3 Consulting.
So P3 Development Group, P3 Consulting, we started this path 15 years ago. We are a research and strategy firm that really focuses on organizations and leaders that are committed to sustainable impact. And what that means for us is P3's expertise in engineering and law and strategy allows for us to reach out to develop tailored solutions that drive strategic clarity. I would say for me, without community, this just would not have been possible. When I founded P3, first of all, it was founded through friendship and through partnership and a tremendous amount of respect for myself and my colleague. And so in starting that journey, it was always first about how we would pull others along and how we would do that in a business model that was nimble and responsive to the needs of our client.
P3 is at the beginning of a new journey, and you're transitioning into a single owner model. How has that changed your perspective on running a business?
Any aspect of a new step out, a new journey, it always comes with, some aspect of fear, like fear of the unknown, fear of not succeeding in this next step. But
I always get this question myself, being in the professional services industry is, how do you get work?
Man, the stories that I could tell around just kind of the importance of maintaining those one-on-one relationships.
What's next for P3 Development Group?
What's next for P3?
Welcome to Fyght Talk. My name is Christian Young. Welcome to Fyght Talk. My name is Christian Young. All eyes on me. And it's not a Tupac song that we're going to be talking about today, but we're going to be talking to the CEO of a professional services firm and get a little bit of insight into her journey as she moves from a partnership style business to a sole proprietorship, understanding what impact 15 years in the business community has had, understanding how community has really helped her form her business and get her to where she is today, and also understand some of the journey of how she sells, how she connects with her vendors, and how she just makes it through, especially when dealing with the new reality of going from two people to one in all of the business decisions that she makes. I look forward to sharing this conversation with you because it's going to be very insightful and help maybe some of you understand the challenges of moving to the next phase of your business. Hello. Today we are joined by Genyne Edwards, founder of P3 Consulting. How are you today, Janine?
I am awesome. Thank you. How are you doing?
I am doing well. So I want to, before we kind of get started, can you tell us a little bit about your business?
Sure. So P3 Development Group, P3 Consulting, we started this path 15 years ago. We are a research and strategy firm that really focuses on organizations and leaders that are committed to sustainable impact. And what that means for us is P3's expertise in engineering and law and strategy allows for us to reach out to develop tailored solutions that drive strategic clarity, sometimes fosters creativity, but most importantly, strengthens partnerships.
So you've been in business for a while. P3 Development Group has been in operations for over 15 years now. What have been some of the more impactful things that have kind of influenced your thoughts around running a business?
Wow. I'll say it's probably first to give credit to my family. So I come from an entrepreneurial family from the Delta, Mississippi. And I say that because my dad's from Mount Bayou, Mississippi, which is a little small town in Mississippi that became a hub for Black-owned businesses and really focused on self-sufficiency. So there was always an example of Black leaders owning businesses. And so my family came to Milwaukee during the Great Migration, and that really is the foundation for everything that I do. This idea of faith and stick-to-itiveness and risk and perseverance for me started at a very early age, seeing my mother and father take those risks. But what I think has made my journey distinctive has been also observing other entrepreneurial leaders. I was able to kind of, I would say, design and implement a leadership development program in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, that was focused on African American leaders. And along all of my experiences, from engineering to law to being in radio to doing this leadership work, I was able to really see the journey of entrepreneurial leaders and to approach that with a tremendous amount of curiosity.
So one of the things that I'm hearing in this is that there is a very strong connection to community when you think about entrepreneurship. One of the things that we talk about on this show, and it's been very consistent across the board, is that everyone really, this is kind of like a lift as you climb mode. Like there is a lot of, community and, collaboration, just even if it's general idea sharing, and that's how businesses grow. What are your thoughts on that?
Wow. Well, I would say for me, without community, this just would not have been possible. When I founded P3, first of all, it was founded through friendship and through partnership and a tremendous amount of respect for myself and my colleague. And so in starting that journey, it was always first about how we would pull others along and how we would do that in a business model that was nimble and responsive to the needs of our clients. And so for us, that meant always scanning what other consultants were doing, what was happening in the community, and to really truly leverage that as a point of differentiation. We always would talk about kind of being on the dance floor and then going into the balcony and leveraging those insights to be able to build strategy. And so I think for us, it's always been about the connections, about centering the relationships and leveraging that as I would almost say like a gravitational pull, leveraging that presence and our perspective to be able to create organic relationships and to collaborate with other firms. I guess I'll also say that our work has never been done usually with just P3 alone. We've always had the benefit of having collaborators that were always strong in their own lane, be it a subject matter expert that we needed to bring into our team to be able to leverage their perspective to get the work done, and to be working alongside other firms that also were distinctive and had their own value proposition, recognizing that we were stronger together.
So one of the things that I think is interesting, and I always get this question myself, being in the professional services industry, is how do you get work?
Man, the stories that I can tell around just kind of the importance of maintaining those one-on-one relationships. Right now, some of the work that I'm most deeply engaged and passionate about is through relationships that I met 25 years ago when I was overseeing the Department of Tourism for the state of Wisconsin. And understanding that, things change, people change, and that if the fundamental relationship is grounded in trust and just the opportunities that come along that journey, there will always be ways for you to come to the table to be able to provide value. In addition to that, I think because one of my core values, for example, is friendship. And so in work and in life, recognizing that as long as I have those connections, that I will always know about opportunities, people will always be willing to open the door. A certain percentage of our work also, of course, comes through RFP, but RFP is only as good as the context that you have to be able to reach out to someone and say, hey, what's going on? Is there something that I should know about? Is there something important to lift up as we think about leveraging our expertise in that context? And then finally, just realizing that social capital is a real capital, right? People say that your network is your net worth. When you're in a boutique consulting environment, that really is where you lean in to be able to make sure that you're able to hear about the business that's out there and that people are always speaking your name in rooms that maybe you can't be in.
One of the things that I think is tough as someone who delivers professional services is making sure that what you're delivering lands in an impactful way. How do you kind of deal with that challenge sometimes?
Well, I say it has been a challenge, and it's something that we're leaning into right now as a way of really being thoughtful about this 15-year journey, right? I think how we described our services 15 years ago is very different than today. Right now, we talk about research and strategy as being just really two buckets, but have allowed for our journey to give us a sense of where we really are strong. And that really is allowing those qualitative insights to inform meaningful impact. But I have over time started to appreciate where my gifts and talents are best used. And I really like the idea of providing high level support for other senior leaders. It's almost like an iron sharpening iron approach because I've lived that, right? I've had my own ways of navigating complexity and change, and think that sometimes it's really about that process of sharing that, but being able to undergird that with the right process, the right frameworks, and all of that combined allows for us to really be a value add and distinctive. But it's not been easy to always share that story. And so we're getting better at leveraging, of course, social media and the other tools and being thoughtful about what is the core of that story that we want to reach the core audiences that we're interested in partnering with. So it's a journey and we're learning and getting better every day. Doing things like this, right? Just like a wonderful opportunity to be in a conversation with someone that you admire and respect and looking for more of that in the near future.
Thank you for that. Now, see, you didn't throw me off. So speaking of, now you talked about social media.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think I had a conversation about this with some other guests, and we talked about the value of social media and also the trouble with social media. When you think about just, the general marketing, advertising, branding of your business across social media, how do you best feel you engage with your clients?
Mm-hmm. Well, because we started the business strictly word of mouth, which has always been, I think, the bread and butter, is just for our clients to be able to say, hey, you should talk to P3. Like it for us really is the heart of the business. But I will say that reach does matter. And as we have grown from being hyper local, kind of in the Milwaukee and Wisconsin market to being able to reach out nationally, the pandemic was a wonderful time for us to start to leverage social media and to be really thoughtful about how we entered. And so we don't use huge investments there. My background really has been a background of focus on marketing and branding and leveraging understanding that I know around integrated communications. It is not just around one vehicle that you really need to leverage public relations. You need word of mouth. You need to think about social media as part of a set of tools. But it cannot be the end all be all for professional services because we still have to rely on our clients sharing the good news. And so thinking about how to leverage case studies and how to hopefully get some white papers out there in the near future that will also be things that could be shared broadly, but become tools and resources that our clients can use to share the story on our behalf.
So one of the things, and white papers is an interesting topic. You're just like moving on through this. But one of the things that I was thinking about recently is the trends in professional services. I've seen a lot. I'm sure you have seen a lot. Like right now, the newest wave, everybody's giving updates about AI. Previously everybody was giving updates about blockchain. Before that, it was crypto, it was banking laws, it was, SOX, it was whatever was sustainability, all the hot topics. Like How do you manage through those trends?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think leveraging the expertise that you have in your network. There are so many resources, but sometimes it's really hard to kind of weave yourself through it to make sure you know what's actually going to be helpful for you. I've had a trusted kitchen cabinet for many years, and they represent the full spectrum of business and business development. So it's really nothing for me to pick up the phone to just kind of have a quick little conversation or a session with people that are literally experts in the field who say, "Hey, Janine, you don't need to worry about that," or you should be worrying about that in the next 2 years, or here's how I see your business fitting into this bigger conversation. And so I think that's been extremely helpful. I also think though that there's always, kind of like that bigger discussion that's happening. And you have to understand what that means for where you fit in the small business or in the business ecosystem. So thinking about professional services, what's right for some of the larger, big advisory firms is not always, important for the lifestyle business that I've decided to create. And so thinking about right sizing those solutions and that investment in the right way. I'm gonna admit, like, AI is scary, right? It's scary to think about some of the service offerings that used to take us 2 and 3 days, and therefore there was a value associated with those things, dollar value, that those have now diminished, but making sure that we're thinking ahead of what are those real distinctions between what AI can do and that someone with, 30 years of lived experience professionally can do, and then really putting a spotlight on those differentiations.
So one of the things that I think is always a challenge for smaller professional services firm is your people. Now, the larger firms, they carry 300,000 people and, have that level of overhead. How do you manage your teaming environment being a smaller firm?
Wow, I think it's a really important question and conversation. When we started P3, we kind of thought that we wanted a team. We knew that they would be 1099ers, right? That we didn't want to have a huge staff. But we set up the culture of team for P3 in a way that people felt that they were a part of something. And so for us, that meant transparency from the outset, being very intentional about making sure that people knew what work we were going after, how they were a part of it, how we saw them factored into our growth, but also being willing to support them on their own development path. So if that meant saying, hey, there's project management tools and resources that you could potentially access, we're willing to partner with you and invest in you in that way, that we were willing to do that. I do think the idea of team, though, in 2025 is changing, and I may have to have a couple of AI bot team members. But also just thinking that, people really want to understand the vision and to be a part of that and to be a part of working with people that they trust and respect. And so try to make sure that that's centered. And then finally, we're always about leadership and identifying new leaders who may not have the wealth of experience or diverse experiences to be able to lean on, but see themselves on a journey and helping them see that there's hopefully part of their journey could include P3. And that doesn't mean that this will be their stopping point, that we will help them maybe to the next spot. And sometimes that means helping them along when it's time for them to move to the next seat on their leadership journey. But it's all come back to just the heart of the relationships and making sure that we're listening to people's needs and supporting them in a real interesting relationship. And we've done it now for a long time, but always trying to think more about ways to think about doing that. But there's so many people coming out of the workplace. And I think we all will have to start to think more critically around what fractional work looks like, what 1099 looks like. And there are a lot of people who are just starting out on that journey. So how do we support them?
So now thinking about kind of the journey, P3 is at the beginning of a new journey, and you're transitioning into a single owner model. How has that changed your perspective on running a business?
Hmm. Well, I think for so long, when you're a part of a partnership or part of a larger team, there is this natural focus on the we. And I think for this long journey career wise for me, which has always been about, opening the door and walking through a door that I maybe didn't understand or didn't know why was being placed in front of me. I'm really looking forward to celebrating the success of P3, through the partnership, but also celebrating my own personal journey and coming back to some of the fundamentals that I think were really my own life purpose and thinking about that in very creative and innovative ways. I always say that for a long time I've had to fit into different boxes. We all do sometimes to grow and to succeed. But I feel at this life stage is an opportunity for me to put myself all back together again and to really look at the components of the things that I've learned. I've had a tremendous amount of diversity in my career. So the engineering and legal and working in hospitality and working in radio. I mean, it's pretty unique to have all of that cross sector and unique institutional experience. And now being able to bring that to create my own unique approach that leverages all of that is actually pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting for me.
Do you find that it creates a different level of pressure, or do you think that it's just something new because it's new?
Yeah, if I'm being honest, I think that any aspect of a new step out, a new journey, it always comes with some aspect of fear, like fear of the unknown, fear of not succeeding in this next step. But I'm coming back to the fundamentals around like my spiritual guidance and grounding, coaching support. I have a strong executive coach relationship with someone who's been with me for 20 years. She was my marriage coach. She's been my coach in many aspects of life. And so leaning into that, and also just coming back to some of those core values. And for me, it is authenticity and, me showing up and being the same person no matter what has really served me well. But also just thinking about accountability. And so oftentimes I'm putting systems of accountability in place for others and now trying to put that, back on myself and on P3 is a really natural part of the journey, but something that hopefully allows me to demystify some of those concerns and some of the fears that I have. And so I'm working, right? I'm working at it every day and I'm putting the team in place that I know will hopefully help move us along. But I'm really, I think, grateful to have so many partners who I feel are rooting for me and that are in it with me.
So you worked for, you had a career, several careers in different industries, and, you're an attorney, you worked in engineering, you worked in hospitality and all of that. In that moment, when you stopped all of the employment and became the employer, was there any fear? Was there, how did you manage that? Because I know when I was moving from, being a corporate employee into being an employer, I was nervous. Like I thought I was over there making plans for being unhoused. It was a whole slew of things that definitely required some coaching. But how did you manage through that?
Wow. Well, I'll say at the time, I probably didn't know all the things to be afraid of. It was more of kind of sharing at the time. My now husband, we had just started dating, and I was sharing with him that I had I got to move out of this context and I want to start my own thing. And it was him that really kind of put up the mirror to me to help me see myself clearly to say, hey, you have all these relationships, all these people are rooting for you. And I think that for me was a way for me to come back to like my own self-efficacy, right? Like that I truly have to be able to believe in my own capacity to deliver. And at that time, it was a much smaller goal. It was a financial goal of can I pay my bills? And so I think kind of deciding that there were these steps. First, it was can I pay my bills? Then I was able to establish a bigger set of goals. And then through partnership, able to leverage really the bandwidth and the capability that we both have. But I always tell people, start to put it in digestible pieces for you. And if your amount is $100,000, then who are 10 people that will give you $10,000? Let's start there. Let's start with really just getting clear about the network that you have and who's a part of it that will help support you. As I now am starting to develop new goals, I'm also just making sure that those goals align with the quality of life that I want to have. I don't want audacious goals that are so big that it keeps me from the flexibility and the freedom that I've established thus far. And so while other people on the outside are like, oh, yeah, Janine, you should do this, or you should say, you have to come back to what's most important for you. I still like to travel a lot. And I know that that requires a certain amount of being able to be flexible and responsive to the needs of my clients. But at the same time, I want to do that in a measured way. So I'm always trying to come back to what's most important as a starting point. And I think every entrepreneur has to do that when you're starting off. It's like, make sure you don't forget yourself as you're developing really big plans for your future.
What's the best business advice you've ever received?
Ooh. I always think about, and especially in the context of what's happening globally around politics, one of my mentors told me that, follow those, right? Don't forget about the fact that you sit in a much bigger ecosystem of both political realities, but also in your own community or your own context. There's always the importance of scanning what's happening. And I naturally do that. I'm pretty curious, and so I always want to be able to know what's happening around me. But I do think it's very easy for entrepreneurs to put their head down and not remember that you should be looking at the trends and that you need a way to be able to get real-time information that will help you make really good decisions. And so I think that for me has been so helpful. Even during the pandemic, of course, when it was very scary and we lost all of our contracts in 2 days, it was more about understanding that there still was a need for someone that was engaged on the ground to be able to get information out for others. And quite honestly, that was our first large contract to bridge to the future, was the understanding that there's still going to be a need for what you offer. You might have to retool it. You might have to reshape it, change the language about it, but coming back to what is your real value. And that all comes back from making sure that you're following like the big picture and the bigger trends that are happening in the world and making sure you adapt to those.
And then final question.
Mm-hmm.
What's next for P3 Development Group?
What's next for P3? Definitely shiny new website, right? New operating system that will allow for our clients to be able to access us and our services more easily. I talked about these technology upgrades. I think one of the things that we're really being thoughtful about is all of the insights that we've collected. How do you ensure that people can have them, right, easily? And wanting to be able to leverage our website to be able to do that very easily. And so I'm excited about that because it's like anything else. I have a wealth of information, a wealth of framework, but it's really hard to disseminate them without leveraging some of the tools like technology. And then I think finally, hopefully just, more resource, more reach, always thinking about how to be able to get to the people who need us and always looking for our kind of people. I mentioned this kind of iron sharpening iron. And for me, that comes with a certain understanding of like who those people are, because we don't really want to work with everyone. We want to work with leaders who are ready to drive impact and hopefully we have now ability to assess what that personality and the style of those leaders are. So I'm just trying to find my kind, either to collaborate with or clients to be able to provide services. So more of that. I'm very excited about it.
And where can we find you on social media?
You can find us on LinkedIn at P3 Development Group. You can also check our website out, www.p3developmentgroup.com. Like I said, new changes coming soon. And so look for us. We are based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but we're working internationally. So find us. If you're interested in strategic clarity and you want to actually have a real impact for your organization or for you as an individual, then we are the firm and we're the right partner for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.